What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So tonight we're going to try to figure out a way to raise the driver's seat on my 2020 Talon 1000x4 over here. We're going to try to raise the seat a little bit and hopefully push it back a good inch or so to gain more leg room. Now again, I'm a taller guy at about 6'3". I have longer legs, longer arms. I do fit in the Talon. I would just like to gain a little bit more leg room so that my legs aren't cramping up on longer rides. Now, for many of you that already own a Talon or are familiar with these Honda Talons, on the floorboard of the driver's side, there's that wall where your left foot rests on. So because that foot wall is a little bit higher, it puts your left leg at more of a bend and at more of an angle, which puts a little bit more pressure on your pelvic and hip area, especially if you're a taller rider. So my goal is to be able to raise the seat a little bit and hopefully try to push it back a little bit. So without further ado, let's jump in and let's see what we can come up with.
Okay, so here we go. This is my 2020 Talon 1000x4. Now it is pretty dirty. Again, I had it out the other night, so don't mind the dirt. So if we take a closer look inside, this is what I'm looking at here. So what I think might work best is if we take these 4 bolts, there's one here, one over there, and then you can see the ones in the back right here on both sides. So I'm not removing the main bracket from the frame. I'm not removing the sliders either. This is basically the slider here. So if you release this lever here, the entire frame here is sliding on that channel right there. So we're leaving all that in place. We just need to raise this part up right here. Now, if you see here, the back is lower than the front. So the front is a little higher because it's giving you that angle so that you sit down deeper into here, and it gives you a little bit more of a reclined backrest. So some people might choose to put extra spacers in the back to get that seat level, which is going to take your backrest and sit you a little bit more straight up. Some people find that helpful. I may or may not do that myself. I'm not sure yet. But you can buy spacers. You can just put extra washers in here. There's a couple cheap ways to do this. Here's what I think I might try doing. Because I'm 6'3", I have longer legs. I want to get maximum leg room in this machine. Now over here, this right here, some people consider it like a dead pedal or just a foot shelf for stability. I don't know if that could really be cut out or not, but that is a pain in the butt right there because there's not enough room over here where the pedals are for you to shove both of your feet. In an emergency situation, if your leg's cramping up and you need to stretch it out, you can tuck your left foot to the left of the brake pedal and stretch it out, but it's not something you want to do while you're driving. So this pedal rest here, I'd like to see if I can get that removed, but we'll do that a different day. We'll start ripping all this out and see what we could do as far as having that taken out. But for today, my goal is to try to work on this seat. Now, if you just happen to put spacers at the bottom of this bracket right here, take that bolt out, put a spacer, lift it up. Lifting your seat up will give you, theoretically, a little bit more leg room because you're sitting up higher so your legs won't have to have as much of a bend. Now, my goal is to shove it back further. So if we come in the back seat here, now if we look here in the back seat, here's the situation here. This bar right here is more of your stabilizer bar for your passengers in the back to grab onto. As you can see here, there is some space right here, okay? And if you look here in front of this little shroud here, there is a little bit of space there, maybe an inch or so there. So here's my thought. So what I'm going to try to do first, before I start cutting any pipes back there, I want to start trying to raise the seat first. And to do that, I went to the store and I bought this punched square tube. It's 14 gauge, it's 1.5 inch, and it's 3 feet long, okay? So I figure I could probably cut it into sections so I can have it laying across that whole channel down there. So my thought is this: I want to take a measurement from the front to the back, add the bracket across the back, but make it a little bit longer. That'll allow me to take the seat and bolt it back an inch or two. That way I'm lifting the seat up 1.5 inches, and then I'd like to try to shift the seat back 1.5 inches. And then I could take this bracket and just bolt it to the bar here by going through one of these holes. And then if I really want to, I can add some spacers in the back to get that seat raised up a little bit. So this is all something I'm basically trying to figure out on the fly, so just bear with me. Let me first start off by taking the seat out of the machine. Let's take a couple measurements and see what we're working with.
Okay, so this is what I've come up with so far. I did end up removing the driver's seat. I have it sitting over here. I did go ahead and cut my metal brackets here into 15-inch sections. Now, I did try a couple different ways of doing this. The first way I tried was laying the metal tubing down on the bottom bracket and using the longer bolts to mount the metal tubing to these brackets. And then I figured I would just mount the sliding guide rails on top of that square metal tubing. So I tried that and it did work for lifting up the seat, but it didn't give me a whole lot of clearance to move back. So then what I tried to do was took the sliding bracket like that, leave that in its normal position, then take my metal tubing and mount it on top of these posts, and in that way it'll slide back a little further. I cut the tubes just long enough to where they would fit over this rail, but when slid all the way back, I had an extra hole to mount the seat back, one extra hole, which gained me about 1 inch. So I have one done, and it looks like this. Okay, so I just went ahead, as you can see there, I put a bolt in like that, and I put a bolt on the other side like that. So basically it looks like that. Now, when I do the same thing to that side, I can mount the rear post right here to the furthest hole in the back, which ended up sliding my seat back about 1 inch. So cutting the square tubing, I believe at 15 inches. Let me just double check. Yeah, about 15 inches. This worked out pretty good for me because the last hole worked for mounting the seat to the last hole. And then I think the front hole would line up somewhere up here in the front. But it allowed my seat to go back about 1 inch, and it raised my seat a good 1.5 inches, if not a little bit more. So I did a trial test fit. I sat everything in place. I sat on the seat. It did give me a little bit more leg room. Again, just that little bit of leg room took a lot of pressure off my hip because, again, I could still rest my foot over here and the top of my thigh was level. My knee was no longer up real high going down to where my hip is. So this should work. I think this is going to work for me. And because of the way this lined up, I don't need to cut this bar, okay? I think the way I have the seat pushed in, it will push the seat all the way up against this bar. But as you can see over here on the passenger side, there's a gap, okay? There's easily 1 inch to 1.5 inch gap from the back of the seat to this bar. So what I did was by using this square tubing and lining up the holes and mounting the rear bracket of the seat on the very last hole, it lifted my seat up 1.5 inches and pushed it back about 1 inch. And I didn't have to cut out this pipe right here, okay? And it does seem to give me an adequate amount of extra leg room. Now, down the road, if I really want to take this a step further, I could try to raise this up a little bit more and push the seat back a little bit more, but this is the problem right here. This post right here, that's part of the frame, and that post right there, that's part of the frame. Okay, so if you line this up, put the bracket on here like that, as you can see, the pipe hits this black pipe right here. The same on this side here too. So to get your seat to clear that, you almost need to go up a good bit higher to be able to get your seat to clear those back pipes right there. I don't want to go up too high because as a tall person, if I keep going up higher, my head's going to get closer and closer to the ceiling, which might make wearing a helmet a little bit more difficult and will have me looking at the very top of my windshield, which I don't want to do. But I think right now this works the best so far, and it does give me a little bit more leg room, which does make sitting in the Talon as a taller guy at 6'3" a good bit more comfortable. But let me keep working on this. Let me try to finish up these brackets and we'll be back with a follow-up. So I'll be back in a second.
Okay, so here is what I ended up coming up with. I had to make a few minor modifications, but I think we got it figured out. So I took the square 1.5 inch metal pipe here, and what I did was I measured it to roughly 15 inches. Now you could probably cut it a little bit shorter because you don't quite need it 15 inches. I just left it at 15 inches just in case someday I wanted to figure out a way to extend it back a little further. So I'd recommend cutting it at 15 inches. That way you have some flexibility. So I cut each pipe to 15 inches. And then what I did was I tried to overlap, if you can see here, I extended this metal pipe past the bracket in the back here, right where my finger's pointing. It's extended past roughly about 3 to 4/8 past that pipe. That way, the bracket here is bumping up against the back metal pipe there. So again, I just pulled the seat forward to show you a little closer. I have this pipe here extending past the top black bracket there about 4/8. That way, when you slide the seat all the way back, the back edge of this 1.5 inch pipe butts up against this metal frame right here. So as you can see here, when I take the shift lever and shift it back, you can see now it's butt up right against that pipe. And then on the metal bracket here, there is one hole extended past. That's the hole that I actually mounted the back frame of the seat to. And then I just lined the front bracket up with the hole up here on the metal plate. And I did have to bore it out a little bit to make it fit, but very simple and easy to do with a drill bit. And I bolted everything down. So now this whole entire seat with the brackets can shift. And then all the way back, if you come back here and look, now there's no more gap between the seat. As you see over there, see how there's a gap? Okay, there's probably at least 1 inch to 1.5 inches of gap behind the seat. Now there's no gap on this seat when it's slid all the way back. So when you put the seat back on, okay, the seat now is about 1.5 inches higher and then about 1 inch to 1.5 inches back. That right there will give you a lot more leg room when you're a taller person trying to fit in the Honda Talon and you just need a little bit more leg room. Now, if you want to take this a step further and get a little bit more leg room, you can, but you are going to be doing some modifications to your vehicle. Number one, you're going to have to cut this bar right here, and you might have to do a little bit of trimming of that bar over there and refabricating it, or you're gonna have to cut this bar right here on an angle and maybe just have it welded straight down right here because you need to get this cleared right here. You could then go ahead and add some more spacers to lift the seat up further so that the seat can slide past this bar right here. So again, it can be done. You're just gonna need to do a little bit of cutting of the metal, a little bit of welding, and just very, very minor fabrication there. Up top, at the center point here, you're gonna have to cut this secondary bar here off, cut that off all the way over to here. Your guest will still have a grip, but your seat is gonna basically come back to this bar. So really, your guests in the back seat won't have much to grip over here. They can still grip here, over here, because the seat is not gonna pinch their fingers, but over here, you're not gonna have much grip because your seat's gonna be hitting this bar. Now, you could always add some hanging handles up top and some handles on the door. And there are ways to gain handles in these vehicles so that your passengers have something to grab onto. But that's basically what you would have to do to extend this even further. You probably could max this out at roughly another 3 inches of shifting this seat back, but you are going to limit your passengers area back here by roughly 2 to 3 inches as well. But the way I did it here gained maximum legroom length because I shifted the seat back about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, and then I raised the seat about 1.5 inches. So again, as a taller person here, let me get in. Okay, again, it's 6'3". You can see where my leg is. Like, I have so much room here where my knee is. So I have plenty of room. Over here on my left leg, with my foot up on the floor shelf over here, my leg's still pretty level, okay? It used to be up like this on a high angle like that, which put a lot of pressure on my hip. Now, with my foot on that footrest there, my legs level and I have plenty of leg room, and it feels a little bit more comfortable. I have a little bit more leg room and I don't have as much pressure on my hip area. Now, one of these days, I am going to go ahead and figure out a way to cut this floor rest out of there, but that's going to be a separate video, because I think if you could cut or notch this area out right here, let's just say that those horizontal lines here were straight across, okay? If we could go ahead and get a little bit more foot room right here, that would help out a lot as well. So that'll be for a separate video, but for today's video, lifting the seat 1.5 inches and pulling it back 1.5 inches has definitely helped gain some leg room in the Honda Talon. And because of the high rail here coming in and out, when your seat's a little bit lifted, it's a little easier to get your foot in and out over here when you're getting out, as before when you sat down lower. Now it's a very simple getting in and out, and it's all good to go. So again, this is what I would recommend doing when you're trying to get maximum leg room in your Honda Talon without doing any major metal cutting and fabrication. You can just do spacers, but if you do a spacer, you're just lifting your seat up. You're not shifting it back. If you do metal pipe like this, now it doesn't have to have the holes in it. If you can find 1.5 inch square metal tubing without holes, that's fine too. You'll just have to measure out where your brackets are going to line up and drill your own holes. But the metal bracket here with the holes in it, I think looks pretty sharp. It gives you a little bit more flexibility when lining up your brackets and bolts. But I'm gonna go ahead and ride it like this for a little while. And then if I like it and everything fits pretty good and I don't have to make any further adjustments, I'll probably take the seat back out, and then I'll either paint or powder coat these brackets here. I'll make them black so that they match in with everything and look really good. But this is what I've come up with, and so far I really, really like it. I think it works a lot better. Again, as a taller person trying to fit in the Honda Talon, getting a little bit more leg room is crucial, and I think I just accomplished it, and it really didn't cost me much money. That whole 3-foot section of that pipe was like $37 or $38 at Home Depot, and then I just had some extra bolts laying around that I used to bolt the seat to that bracket. But a little blue Loctite, a couple extra bolts, that little piece of pipe, a little bit of cutting of that pipe to measure things out, and you could do the same thing. But this is what I was able to come up with. So far, it works really good, and I'm really happy with it, and I give myself a thumbs up.
Okay, everybody, so we are done. So the driver's seat modification worked out pretty good. I just went ahead and got some 1.5 inch square piping. Again, my local stores didn't have the solid square piping. They only had the 1.5 inch in the square pipe that already had the holes through it. So either way, it worked out. It actually made installation a little easier. So what I did was I cut each pipe to about 15 inches. I wanted that pipe to hang off about 1/2 inch back. That way I can mount my seat back just that extra 1/2 inch to 1 inch back, and that helped out a lot. So again, once I got everything mounted in position and bolted back down, in total, I gained about 1.5 inches in height, and I gained roughly 1 inch going back. And trust me, for a taller person, again, I'm 6'3", for a taller person sitting in a Honda Talon, that 1.5 inches of leg room makes a pretty decent difference. So there you go. For any of you that are a little taller out there that want to gain a little bit more leg room in the Honda Talon, this is what I would recommend doing. If you need to take it a little bit further, if you want to gain a good 3 inches of leg room length, you're gonna have to probably cut those bottom angled pipes so that your rails can slide past them at the bottom. And then you're probably gonna have to cut that smaller metal pipe that's on the back side of the handrail. You're gonna have to cut that out so that the back seat can slide back further. It is possible, it's just gonna take a little bit more modification to do. Who knows, one of these days, maybe I'll try it. But for now, I'm gonna stick with what I did. And what I do wanna try next is figuring out a way to cut that little stomp pad off on the left. I want to try to cut that out of there to give my left foot a little bit more room, because I really don't like that stomp pad where it is. But that'll be for a separate video. But as for today, this little modification worked. It does help out. It does make a pretty big difference having that extra 1.5 inches of leg room, and I'm really happy with it. So that's it for today's video. I hope this video helps some of you out. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button and like this video. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments section, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And also do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, because it definitely helps me out and I greatly appreciate it. So that's it. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you. I truly appreciate you all. And as always, see you in the next video.